The moment I saw Karen's face turn pale, her perfectly planned HOA empire crumbling before her eyes, I knew this mountain wasn't just mine. It was her downfall. What started as a peaceful escape to the woods turned into a full-blown neighborhood war, and I had the winning card, the only road in and out. If you believe in karma finding its way back to those who abuse power, hit subscribe. This story proves justice doesn't always need a courtroom. Sometimes it just needs a mountain road. It started as a quiet dream. I wanted peace. After years of city noise, concrete walls, and neighbors who measured worth by their lawn size, I was done. The mountain property listing felt like fate. A small log cabin overlooking a valley, surrounded by pine trees that sang when the wind brushed through. The listing mentioned one detail: private road access maintained by owner. I didn't think much of it. A few potholes were worth it for silence. I closed the deal fast. The seller, an old man with a crooked smile, handed me the keys and said something I'd only understand later. "Take care of that road. It's more powerful than you think." At first, I brushed it off. Maybe he was just nostalgic. The first few weeks were bliss. I woke up to the sound of birds instead of traffic. The smell of pine and wet soil filled every breath. It felt untouched by time. Until the SUVs started showing up. They came in clusters: silver, beige, and black, each one creeping up the narrow gravel road that led past my property and wound further up the mountain. The first time I thought they were tourists. Then I saw the signs. Identical wooden mailboxes, security cameras on posts, and perfectly trimmed hedges where wildflowers once grew. That's when I learned. Above my cabin sat Pine Ridge Estates, a private HOA community built only a year ago, and leading directly into their gates was my road. The next morning, I found a letter taped to my cabin door. It was written on official-looking stationery with a gold seal at the top: Pine Ridge Homeowners Association. It wasn't a welcome note. "Dear property owner, you are using a private HOA-maintained access road. All non-member traffic must cease immediately. Failure to comply may result in legal action or towing." I stared at it, confused. I wasn't using their road. They were using mine. I drove down to the county office the next day to clarify the boundaries. After hours of dusty records and old maps, the clerk raised his brow and chuckled. "Son, you own that road. Entire stretch of it, from the highway to the ridge." I blinked. "Wait, you mean the only road they can use?" He nodded, tapping the faded deed. "Exactly. Looks like the HOA built without realizing the road's still private property. It's yours." I didn't know whether to laugh or panic. I had an entire neighborhood depending on my land without permission. The next day I met her, Karen, president of the Pine Ridge HOA. The kind of woman who wore authority like perfume, thick, suffocating, impossible to ignore. She showed up in a pristine white SUV, sunglasses sharp enough to cut through glass. Without introducing herself, she said, "You're the man blocking our access. We need you to sign over the road to the HOA immediately. It's community property now." I told her calmly, "It's not. The road's on my deed. I'm fine with people using it, but it's mine." Her face twisted. "That's not how this works." I shrugged. "Then maybe you should have checked before building." Her lips tightened into a smirk that didn't reach her eyes. "We'll see about that." That was the moment I knew peace was over. Within a week, HOA trucks were parking halfway on my property, inspecting gravel. They even posted new signs: "Private HOA road, no trespassing," on my land. I removed them quietly the first time, then the second. But by the third, I nailed up my own private property, access by permission only. That night, I found tire marks in my driveway. Someone had driven up close, then reversed fast. The mountain silence I once loved now felt heavy, like the air itself was waiting for something to happen. One morning, I woke to the sound of engines, dozens of them. The HOA had gathered on the road, holding clipboards and cameras, filming me as if I was the intruder. Karen stood at the front, barking orders. I didn't say a word. I just smiled, walked to my mailbox, and dropped a certified letter inside. Inside that envelope was a legal notice, an invoice for road maintenance fees, backdated 3 years. Every single HOA member who used the road now owed me. The silence that followed was beautiful, but I knew it wouldn't last. 2 nights later, I heard knocking. Not polite, angry, relentless. I opened the door slowly. Karen stood there, drenched in rain, eyes wide with fury. Behind her, headlights glowed through the mist like watching eyes. She said one thing before storming off into the darkness. "You're going to regret this." The mountain was no longer quiet. It was watching, waiting. And for the first time, I wondered, what did that old man really mean when he said the road was powerful? I was about to find out. The rain that night didn't stop for hours. It felt like the mountain itself was angry, each drop hitting the tin roof like a ticking clock, counting down to something inevitable. By morning, fog wrapped the trees in a ghostly haze. My cabin, once a sanctuary, now felt surrounded. Every time I looked toward the road, I expected to see Karen's white SUV waiting there. She didn't show up that day. Instead, I found something else. A county truck parked near my mailbox. 2 men in reflective vests stood by the ditch, pretending to measure something. When I asked what they were doing, one mumbled, "Drainage inspection, complaint from Pine Ridge." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean the HOA?" He nodded. "They filed a claim that your road runoff is flooding their property." I couldn't help but laugh. The road had been there for decades, gravel, sloped perfectly, untouched. But I didn't push. I knew exactly what this was, Karen's first counterattack. That afternoon, I got another letter taped to my cabin door. This one, legal-looking, printed on heavy paper. "Cease and desist from obstructing community access. Your actions constitute interference with essential services and may lead to civil penalties." No signature, just Pine Ridge HOA Legal Committee. That was funny, because according to the county clerk, they didn't even legally own the land their gate sat on. Still, I kept my calm. I recorded everything. Every sign, every letter, every truck. 2 days later, I woke to the sound of heavy machinery. I looked out my window, and my stomach dropped. The HOA had hired a crew to repave the road. My road. Bulldozers and dump trucks lined the gravel stretch like an invading army. Workers in neon vests dumped fresh asphalt, flattening years of nature under black tar. Karen stood at the center of it all, arms crossed, watching me. When I stepped outside, one of the workers called out, "Sir, please step back. We're under contract with the Pine Ridge Association." I shouted over the engines, "This is private property. Stop the work." Karen didn't even flinch. She smiled and said, "You wanted it maintained. We're maintaining it." I felt a cold fury rise inside me. They weren't just breaking the law, they were trying to erase my ownership, 1 inch at a time. So I did something they didn't expect. I called the sheriff. When the deputy arrived, I showed him my deed and the survey map. He looked at Karen, then back at me. "Ma'am, he's right. This road is his. You can't alter or access it without permission." For the first time, Karen's mask cracked. She argued, protested, even pulled out a binder of HOA documents. But it didn't matter. The deputy ordered the crew to stop and leave. As the machines rolled away, Karen glared at me with something deeper than anger. It was humiliation. That night, the mountain was quiet again, but not peaceful. When I walked outside to check my generator, I saw tire tracks circling my cabin. Someone had driven onto my property again, close enough to crush the edge of my flower bed. And in the morning, my mailbox was gone. Snapped clean off its post. I knew she was behind it. But without proof, I couldn't act. So I decided to play her game, only smarter. The next day, I went into town and installed 2 new security cameras. Not the cheap kind, infrared, motion-triggered, cloud-backed. I mounted them where no one could see. And I waited. It didn't take long. 3 nights later, movement alarms went off around midnight. I opened the feed, and there she was. Karen, in a hoodie, flashlight in hand, ripping up one of my private property signs. I watched her glance around nervously, then toss it into her SUV and drive off. It was all on video. I sent the footage directly to the county sheriff and the HOA board. The next day, my phone rang. "Mr. Rhodes," the sheriff said, "looks like your neighbor might have crossed a few lines. We'll be having a word with her." That word turned into a full investigation. Trespassing, property damage, harassment. And yet, Karen didn't stop. Instead, she doubled down. The HOA began a smear campaign. They filed noise complaints, claimed I was running illegal business operations from my cabin, said I was endangering residents. The county sent inspectors. Every time I passed. Every time, Karen's frustration grew. But then she made her biggest mistake yet. One Friday morning, I got a notice from a private law firm, Pine Ridge Estates vs. Daniel Rhodes. They were suing me for restricting access to community infrastructure. I stared at the letter, trying not to laugh. I drove straight to my lawyer, an old friend named Marcus who dealt with land disputes before. When I showed him the paperwork, he flipped through it slowly, then looked up, smirking. "She doesn't have a leg to stand on," he said. "They built illegally across your easement. We'll file a counterclaim for trespass and damages." And that's exactly what we did. The legal filings hit the HOA like a thunderstorm. Suddenly, Karen wasn't so loud anymore. The board started cracking. Some members called me privately, saying they never wanted this fight. That Karen had pushed them all into it. But she refused to back down. I knew it wasn't about money. It was about control. The road was power, and she couldn't stand not owning it. That night, I heard a strange noise outside. A faint humming, like an engine idling too long. When I stepped onto the porch, I froze. Down the hill, headlights were parked, facing my cabin. They didn't move, didn't turn off, just watched. I stood there in the dark, heart pounding, until the lights finally flicked out and vanished into the trees. It wasn't random anymore. Karen wasn't just angry, she was dangerous. And deep down, I realized something chilling. That old man who sold me the cabin wasn't warning me about the road's value. He was warning me about its curse. Because every person who tried to claim this road lost something. And soon, so would she. The following weeks unfolded like a slow-motion storm. Papers, hearings, meetings. Every day, another envelope from Karen's lawyer landed in my mailbox. Each one filled with accusations and legal jargon, all meant to intimidate. But what she didn't know was that I had something she could never fight, the truth buried in the land itself. When Marcus, my lawyer, dug deeper into the property history, he found something no one expected. The road wasn't just part of my parcel, it was tied to an old mining claim from the 1940s. A private right-of-way that granted full ownership and exclusive control to whoever owned my cabin's land. The catch? Any attempt to alter or reclassify it without the owner's consent was a federal violation. Marcus looked up from the dusty file and said, "This isn't just your driveway, Daniel. Legally, this is your domain. You could shut that entire HOA off the mountain if you wanted to." I leaned back, stunned. "And the county?" He grinned. "They'd have to support you. It's federal property rights. Ironclad." The power of that realization hit me hard. I wasn't just defending a cabin anymore, I was defending a legacy. Still, I didn't want war. I wanted peace. So, before the court date, I offered Karen one last chance. I wrote her a calm, professional letter explaining everything. The documents, the history, even a simple solution. Pay a small annual fee for road access, and we'd both move on. She never replied. Instead, a week later, I woke to find orange spray paint across the edge of my fence. Road thief. Her message was clear. She wasn't going to stop. The lawsuit proceeded. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and tension. Karen sat 2 tables away, in her tailored blazer and pearls, pretending to be calm. Behind her, a few HOA board members whispered like schoolchildren caught cheating. When the judge called my name, Marcus stood. Calm, confident. He laid out the maps, the deeds, the legal record. The 1947 mining claim. The county's survey confirming my ownership. Every word tightened the noose around their argument. Karen's lawyer tried to push back, claimed community necessity, historical usage, public interest. The judge interrupted. But the road was never public, correct? Silence. Karen fidgeted in her seat. Her lawyer stammered. Technically, no, Your Honor, but… Then this case is closed, the judge said flatly. The road belongs to Mr. Rhodes. Any further interference by the HOA will be considered trespassing. Bang. Gavel down. Just like that, it was over. Or so I thought. As we left the courtroom, I caught Karen's expression. It wasn't defeat. It was quiet, simmering rage. Outside, she walked up to me, her voice low but sharp. You think you've won, don't you? I met her gaze. I didn't want to win. I wanted peace. She smiled faintly. Peace doesn't last long on this mountain. That night, a storm rolled in, violent and loud, thunder shaking the cabin walls. I stood at the window watching lightning flash across the ridge, illuminating the road that started it all. Something about it felt ancient, like the mountain was alive and restless. And then, in one flash of light, I saw it, a shadow near the edge of the forest. Human-shaped. Still. Watching. When the thunder cracked again, it was gone. The next morning, I found something strange at the end of my driveway, an old, rusted sign half buried in mud. I pulled it free and wiped away the dirt. Ash Hollow Mining Company, authorized personnel only. The name matched the documents Marcus had found. But this sign looked far older, like it had been waiting decades to resurface. Curious, I called Marcus and asked about the mining company. He dug through more records and called back that evening. Daniel, he said slowly, there's something weird. The company was shut down after a collapse killed several workers in 1947. And guess what? The collapse site is directly under the section of the road near your cabin. My stomach tightened. So you're saying the road is built over a mine? Exactly. An old shaft sealed off for safety. They probably built the road right over it when they closed operations. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak, every groan of the timbers felt heavier. The thought of an abandoned mine beneath my land unsettled me, but it also made something clear. The old man who sold me the cabin knew. That's why he said the road was powerful. Not just legally, spiritually. And maybe that's why Karen's obsession with it felt almost cursed. Days later, as the HOA tried to regroup, I noticed new problems in their community. Sinkholes forming near their manicured lawns. Cracks running down the asphalt. The same road they fought to control was now betraying them. Karen demanded the county investigate, claiming sabotage. But when inspectors arrived, they confirmed what I already suspected. The ground under Pine Ridge was unstable. The mining tunnels below were collapsing. And the only safe access to repair crews? Through my road. The irony wasn't lost on me. Karen tried calling, emailing, even sending letters through lawyers. Suddenly, her tone had changed, polite, desperate. But I didn't respond. Marcus advised me to stay silent until they proposed a formal agreement. He was right. The mountain was speaking for itself now. And it wasn't on her side. By the end of the month, the HOA filed for emergency permission to use my land for reconstruction. For the first time, the power had shifted. They needed me. When Karen came to my cabin again, she didn't come with anger. She came with fear. The same woman who once called me a trespasser now stood at my porch, her voice trembling. Please, she said, our homes are at risk. The road's the only way trucks can reach the ridge. I looked past her at the mist curling through the trees, the faint rumble of shifting earth below. You'll get access, I said finally. But on my terms. And when she nodded, defeated, I realized something profound. This wasn't about land or power anymore. It was about respect, something the mountain demanded from everyone who dared live on it. Still, deep down I felt uneasy, because if the road really sat over a buried mine, then maybe what was collapsing under Pine Ridge wasn't just earth. Maybe it was something awakening, and Karen's nightmare was only beginning. By mid-autumn, Pine Ridge looked nothing like the glossy magazine community it once pretended to be. The smell of fresh asphalt had been replaced by the sour scent of wet clay and broken earth. Cracks split across the main street, running like dark veins through the heart of the neighborhood. Karen's perfect lawns were gone, replaced by mud, construction tape, and fear. From my porch, I could see it all unfold. Trucks came and went, workers shouting over the hum of generators, their helmets glowing under floodlights that sliced through the mountain fog. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like something else, like the mountain was warning all of us to stop digging. The first collapse happened on a Monday. Around dawn, a deep rumble rolled through the valley, so low it rattled the cabin windows. Birds burst from the trees, crying out in panic. When I stepped outside, the sound was gone, but the air felt strange, charged. Within hours, news spread across the ridge. A backyard behind one of the HOA homes had caved in. A 20-foot sinkhole swallowed half a deck and a garden shed. No one was hurt, but the message was clear. The ground wasn't safe anymore. Karen blamed me, of course. She called the county again, insisting that unauthorized drainage from my private road was weakening the soil beneath Pine Ridge. But the inspectors knew better now. They'd seen the old maps, the mining tunnels. The HOA's fancy homes were sitting on hollow ground. I watched from a distance as her world cracked, literally. A few days later, a second collapse opened up near the HOA's community gate. Ironically, it tore through the same spot where they'd planted a private property sign over my road months earlier. The earth split, dragging the signpost halfway underground, like the mountain itself was reclaiming what belonged to it. Then came the storm. A cold front swept in overnight, flooding the valley. Sheets of rain turned the gravel road into a river of mud. I spent hours redirecting runoff from my cabin, hammering makeshift trenches with trembling hands as lightning flashed across the ridge. Through the downpour, I saw headlights, Karen's SUV struggling up the hill. I almost didn't answer when she knocked. When I opened the door, her hair was soaked, her eyes wild. "Daniel," she gasped, "we need to evacuate the ridge. The road, your road, is the only way out." For a moment, I hesitated. Months of her harassment, the lawsuits, the damage, and now she wanted help. But behind her, I saw the glow of flashlights in the rain. Dozens of people, families, children, huddled on the road waiting for a path down. I couldn't turn them away. I nodded. "Get them through, one at a time. Slow and steady." As I directed traffic, the road trembled beneath us. The mountain groaned like it was alive, shifting its ancient bones beneath the tires. Halfway through the evacuation, a deafening crack echoed through the valley. I turned toward the ridge, and my heart dropped. A massive section of Pine Ridge had given way. Through the sheets of rain, I saw rooftops tilt and slide, swallowed by a cloud of dust and debris. The ground beneath the HOA's community center had collapsed entirely, into what looked like a black pit yawning from the earth. The screams that followed will never leave me. Karen stood frozen, watching her kingdom crumble. Her SUV headlights illuminated the edge of the hole, rain cascading into it like tears. For a moment, she looked at me, not with anger, not even fear, but disbelief. As if the mountain she ruled had finally turned against her. We stayed up all night helping survivors reach the base road. The county rescue teams arrived by morning, setting up floodlights and marking danger zones with bright orange flags. By sunrise, Pine Ridge was gone. The homes that survived were condemned. The HOA disbanded within a week. News stations called it a geological tragedy, citing unstable soil and poor construction oversight. But I knew better. That wasn't just nature's doing. The mountain had chosen when to strike, and who to take. In the days that followed, I explored the edge of the collapse zone. The pit stretched nearly 60 feet deep, its walls slick with mud and stone. Deep inside, I saw something strange: wooden beams, rotted but intact, and the faint glint of rusted metal. The old mine, Ash Hollow. It was open again. Marcus warned me to stay away. "That ground's unstable," he said. "Let the geologists handle it." But at night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The old man's words echoed in my mind. "Take care of that road. It's more powerful than you think." Was this what he meant? That the land had a life of its own? The following week, a construction crew hired by the county started sealing off the mine entrance. They fenced the area, poured concrete, and posted warning signs. But before they finished, one of the workers found something buried in the mud near the edge of the pit, an old, rusted lockbox. They turned it over to me, assuming it was mine since it was technically on my property. When I pried it open, inside were papers, faded deeds, mining records, and a photograph. In the picture stood a group of miners beside the very road I now owned. Among them was a man who looked eerily familiar. Same sharp eyes, same jawline. It was the old man who sold me the cabin. On the back of the photo, in faint ink, were the words, "The road belongs to those who respect it." That night, I stood outside my cabin, staring down the dark stretch of gravel leading toward what was left of Pine Ridge. The fog was thick, curling through the pines like breath. Somewhere deep below, I swore I could hear faint echoes, like hammering, far underground. The mountain wasn't done speaking. And neither was the road. The days after the collapse were eerily quiet. Pine Ridge, once filled with the sounds of lawnmowers, barking dogs, and Karen's constant orders, was now just silence and wind. The kind of silence that pressed against your skin. Most of the homeowners had already left. The county declared the ridge uninhabitable, sealing the remaining homes behind bright orange barricades. Only a handful of people stayed behind to salvage what little they could. And then there was me, still in my cabin, still on that cursed road. I should have left, but something inside me refused to go. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe defiance, or maybe it was the road itself holding me there. The photograph haunted me. Every night, I'd pull it from the old lockbox and study the face of the miner, the old man who sold me the cabin. His eyes were calm, knowing, almost prophetic. I couldn't shake the feeling that he'd been waiting for someone like me to inherit this place. The caption on the back, "The road belongs to those who respect it," echoed in my mind every time I heard the wind shift through the trees. Respect. That word became heavier each day. The weather turned colder and the fog grew thicker. At night, when I looked down the road toward the old mine, I'd sometimes see faint lights flickering through the mist, like lanterns swinging far off in the dark. At first, I thought it was rescue crews. But when I called the county, they told me all operations had stopped. The mine was sealed. No one was there. And yet, the lights kept appearing. Some nights, I heard voices too, low, rhythmic sounds like chanting or maybe work songs. The kind miners might hum deep underground. Marcus told me it was stress, maybe trauma from everything that had happened. But deep down, I knew better. The mountain wasn't resting. It was remembering. One evening, I drove down to the edge of the fenced area where the mine had collapsed. The air there was colder, sharper, and filled with the smell of metal and earth. The warning signs were still up: danger, unstable ground. I parked, left the engine running, and stood there under a bruised purple sky. The sun was setting behind the ridge, painting the broken terrain in long shadows. That's when I saw her. Karen. She was standing near the fence line, dressed in a raincoat, staring into the pit. Her SUV was parked a few feet away, engine off. I hadn't seen her since the night of the evacuation. I called out, "Karen?" She didn't move. Didn't turn. I approached slowly, boots crunching the gravel beneath me. When I got closer, I realized she was whispering. Her voice was barely audible, but I caught fragments, words like forgive and buried. "Karen," I said again gently. Finally she turned. Her face was pale, eyes hollow. "They're still down there," she said. "The miners. You can hear them if you listen long enough." Before I could respond, a low rumble rolled beneath our feet, soft but deep, like something shifting underground. Karen froze. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. She looked at me, tears cutting paths through the dirt on her cheeks. "It's our fault," she whispered. "We built over their graves." I tried to calm her, to guide her back to her car, but she pulled away. "The road brought us here," she said, voice trembling. "And now it's taking us back." Then she turned and walked toward the fence. "Karen, stop!" I shouted. But she didn't. Before I could reach her, the ground gave way beneath her feet, a sudden crack, a sharp cry, and she was gone. The earth swallowed her whole. The rescue teams searched for 2 days but found nothing. Not a trace. The county sealed the entire area with concrete barriers after that. They called it an unrecoverable accident. I called it what it was, the mountain taking back what it was owed. After that day, the strange things grew worse. The lights returned every night, closer now, glowing faintly along the edges of the road. I could hear faint clinks like metal tools striking rock. And once, when I walked out to check the noise, I found something impossible. Footprints. Boot prints, deep in the wet gravel, leading from the direction of the sealed mine straight toward my cabin. But there were no other cars. No visitors. Just me. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by the fire with the old photograph in hand. When the flames flickered, for a split second, I thought I saw movement behind me, shadows shifting along the wall, like figures walking slowly past the window. I turned, but no one was there. The air smelled faintly of smoke and oil, the scent of machines long gone. Then I heard it, a voice. Soft. Male. Whispering from the direction of the road. "Respect it." The fire crackled violently, scattering sparks across the hearth. I stood there frozen, heart hammering in my chest. Outside, the fog was thicker than ever, swirling like breath. I stepped onto the porch and looked down the road. The lights were there again, 5 or 6, moving slowly, steadily. But this time, they didn't fade. They came closer. For the first time, I saw them clearly. Figures. Men in old mining gear, faces hidden under helmets and lamps that glowed with a faint orange hue. Their clothes were torn, covered in dust, their boots leaving wet prints on the gravel. They walked silently past my cabin, heading down toward the bend in the road. Not looking at me. Not stopping. Just moving as if still bound to their task. And then, just as they appeared, they were gone, dissolving into the mist. I stood there long after they vanished, trembling but calm. I finally understood. The road wasn't cursed. It was sacred. It belonged to those who respected it, those who understood its history, its pain, its ghost. Karen had tried to own it, control it, profit from it, and in the end it had taken her back into the earth she disrespected. When dawn came, the mountain was silent again. But the air felt different, lighter, almost peaceful. I looked down at the gravel road, the mist curling across it like smoke, and whispered a quiet promise. "I'll take care of it." And for the first time in months, I felt like the mountain believed me. I didn't see anyone for weeks after that night. The town had emptied, and even Marcus stopped coming by. He said the whole area was condemned now, too dangerous to live near. The ridge was shifting again. But I stayed. I couldn't explain why. It wasn't courage or foolishness. It was something else. Something that told me the story wasn't finished yet. Every morning, I walked down the gravel road, tracing the path the miners' spirits had taken that night. Their footprints had faded, but the feeling remained, like warmth from a fire that had burned long ago. Sometimes I'd catch faint music on the wind. A distant hum, low and steady, like the rhythm of picks striking rock. I stopped being afraid of it. I started listening. The road was teaching me something. At first, I thought it was about respect, about the old and forgotten. But it was deeper than that. The road wasn't just a piece of land. It was memory. Living memory. And it remembered everything. One evening, I decided to visit the ridge one last time before leaving for good. The air was cold and heavy, the fog hanging thick like breath from the mountain itself. The concrete barriers were still in place, but I slipped through the gap I'd found weeks ago. The place was different now. Where Karen had fallen, the ground was smooth, like nothing had ever happened. But I could still feel the energy there. The kind that hums beneath your feet and travels up your spine. I knelt, placed my hand on the soil, and whispered, "I'm sorry." For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, a whisper back. Not a voice exactly. More like the earth breathing. It felt like forgiveness. As I stood, I noticed something new. Faint carvings in the rocks by the ridge. Symbols, half buried in moss. I brushed the dirt away and saw old letters etched deep into the stone. They formed a single word. Remember. The message was clear. As long as someone remembered, the mountain would rest. But if forgotten, if exploited, it would awaken again. I left the ridge that night knowing what I had to do. I packed up what little I had left and went into town. I found Marcus at the diner, alone, drinking coffee that had probably gone cold. When he saw me, his eyes widened. "You're still up there?" "Not anymore," I said. "But I need your help." I showed him the photograph, the miner, and the back inscription. Then I told him everything, the lights, the voices, the carvings. At first, he thought I'd lost it. But the more I spoke, the quieter he got. When I finished, he just nodded slowly. "My grandfather used to talk about that mine," he said finally. "Said there was an accident there. A collapse in 1911. Company buried it, literally and legally. Paid the families to keep quiet." I stared at him. "How many died?" He hesitated. 36. But they only recovered 10 bodies. The rest, never found. I felt the weight of that number settle over me. 36. 36 men still buried beneath Pine Ridge. And the HOA had built roads, driveways, and houses right over them. No wonder the land had rebelled. Marcus and I drove back up the next morning with maps and old record. We found the original mine entrance, sealed under decades of rock and dirt. It was just a faint scar now, but the air there was colder, still breathing that same restless memory. We marked the site, placed a wooden cross, and said a few words. Not a prayer, exactly, just acknowledgement. And for the first time the mountain was still. The fog began to lift, revealing the forest bathed in gold from the morning sun. The air smelled clean. The wind was soft. It was over. Or so I thought. That night, as I packed the last of my things, I found something under the cabin floorboards, a small metal tag, rusted and covered in dirt. I cleaned it carefully and read the faded engraving. Property of James Hollow Mining Company. And below that, scratched in by hand, 36. I froze. The number. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on the porch, staring at the road. It looked peaceful now, like any ordinary country road. The moonlight traced its curves, and the mist drifted gently across it. But deep down, I knew the truth. The road was watching. At midnight, I heard footsteps again, soft, steady, coming from the bend. I stood, heart pounding. The miners. They appeared just as before, shadows in the mist, their lamps glowing faintly. But this time, one figure stopped. He looked straight at me. The same man from the photograph. The miner who'd sold me the cabin. He didn't speak, just nodded once, slowly, deliberately. Then he turned and walked away, his light fading into the fog. I understood what that nod meant. The debt was paid. The story was complete. I whispered, "Thank you," and for the first time since I came to Pine Ridge, I felt peace. The next morning, I left the cabin for good. I didn't look back. But as my truck rolled down that winding road one last time, I noticed something in the rearview mirror. Just a flash of light, faint and flickering. Lanterns. Still walking. Still remembering.